Why does Starfield get so much hate? Starfield gets a pretty insane amount of hate, especially when you consider that the game hasn't even released yet, and we really haven't seen all that much of it. So in today's video, I want to go over why Starfield gets so much hate, especially in recent times. Let's not waste any more time and drop the video a like for me, consider subscribing if you're new around here and you're looking for a place to stay up to date on Starfield news, leaks, discussions and plenty more. With that down, let's get straight to it. Over the last 15 or so years, video games have changed a lot. Back when I was a kid, you would pick up a new video game basically just from its box art, go home, insert the cartridge, and see if it was a good game or not. Nowadays, video games are a lot more popular. It isn't just quote, the nerds and geeks that play them anymore. Almost everybody has some type of gaming platform in their house, whether that be a console or a PC. Because of video games' new popularity, marketing for video games has skyrocketed again over the last 15 to 20 years. But there's something else that unfortunately has grown more and more popular over the same amount of time, and that is corporate greed. Over the last 5 or so years especially, we're constantly seeing video game developers lie to their fans, either promising things that aren't in the game or making the game look a lot better or a lot more stable than it actually is, and sweeping the hate under the rug and keeping the checks once their lies manage to sell their games. I personally believe that Cyberpunk 2077 and Fallout 76 are prime examples of this, but even just in the last month alone, we've seen 2 video games have the same problems, with the Outer Worlds Space of Choice Edition and The Last of Us Part 1 PC port. Again, 2 major video games marketed as perfectly fine and releasing in bad states, just in the last month alone. This really is a major problem, a growing problem that heavily affects video games more and more every year. Because of this, fans are beginning to lower their expectations and beginning to already assume that video games are bad without even playing them, whereas back in the, say, PlayStation 2 days, if we saw a trailer for a video game, we basically knew exactly what we was getting. Another major problem, I think, is the misleading advertisements of video games now. For me personally, a prime example of this was The Last of Us Part 2, which clearly marketed Joel, the game's first protagonist, being a major part of the sequel, whereas actually he's barely in the game at all. If Naughty Dog didn't lie in their marketing, or as they would like to call it, mislead us to avoid spoilers, I wouldn't have purchased the game at all. Thankfully, I did manage to get a refund on my pre-order, but that's besides the point. So in the aftermath of games like Cyberpunk and Fallout 76 especially, which were played by a lot of the same people who will play Starfield, due to the games being similar in nature, it's understandable why so many are refusing to give Starfield a chance, and instead are just straight up hating on the game without even playing it. And I would like to emphasize that if you simply don't think that Starfield looks good, and it just doesn't look like the type of game for you, there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody is entitled to their opinions after all, and you're allowed to dislike a video game. But what I'm mostly talking about here is the people who are online every day, giving Starfield hate and pretty much spreading lies and false information, such as the game being empty and not having much content, or others claiming that the game will not work on the Xbox Series S despite having no proof of that. Another thing that we do definitely need to take into account is the acquisition of Bethesda by Microsoft. Pretty much since Morrowind, Bethesda games have been on almost every platform, and now the company is owned by Microsoft, meaning their games will be exclusive to the Xbox consoles and PCs only. This, I think, understandably, upset a lot of Bethesda fans who prefer gaming on the PS5. For my console choice, I definitely prefer my PS5 over my Xbox Series X. Of course that is just my personal opinion, but I do somewhat understand it. In, again, my personal opinion, I disagree with exclusivity, besides PC exclusive games that have to require more buttons and things such as that, but for the most part I think that exclusivity is just greed, and I mostly disagree with it. I believe that nobody should be punished for owning the platform of their choosing. Xbox fans should be able to play games such as Insomniac's Spider-Man 2, and PlayStation fans who have spent the last 10 plus years waiting for the Elder Scrolls 6 should be able to play it. And I hope that you can all understand my point of view here, even if you disagree. The new Bethesda exclusivity is definitely a driving factor of the Starfield hate. A lot of people I see giving Starfield hate are usually fans of PlayStation, and I think a lot of the time, the PlayStation fans are simply just upset that the game that they've been looking forward to for a long time will no longer be available to them unless they want to spend hundreds for a new console, which I'll likely only use to play this one game, and obviously nobody wants to do that. And in a result, they sort of, for lack of a better word, lie to themselves, and tell themselves that Starfield looks bad, and they choose to only focus on the negative news that comes out, such as the Starfield delays, rather than say the news of Starfield having more handcrafted content than any previous Bethesda Game Studios game. Again, I hope that you can all understand my point of view here. Now of course, there are just people who don't like the look of Starfield, and know that the game won't be for them, and as I said earlier, that is perfectly fine. Not all games are for everyone, and people are allowed their own opinions, but we cannot deny that there is a lot of hate that we see, and it mostly comes from people who very clearly just dislike Xbox as a whole, and that I think is again where most of the hate comes from. Another major driving factor of the hate is actually Bethesda fans themselves. We all know, and I think that we can all agree, that Bethesda takes a very long time to put out their games. Elder Scrolls fans have been waiting over a decade for a new Elder Scrolls video game, and Fallout fans have been waiting almost a decade for a new Fallout video game, and they understandably have gotten very impatient. So when Bethesda announced that they were working on an unknown franchise with Starfield, a brand new IP, it very much annoyed and upset, for lack of a better word, a lot of the Fallout and Elder Scrolls fans, especially because to them, Starfield just means waiting longer for their favourite franchise to get a new game. And as a major Elder Scrolls and Fallout fan myself, I can totally understand it, because if I wasn't such a big sci-fi and space enthusiast, I'd probably be pretty upset with having to wait longer for Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 too. And a lot of the time, you will see comments and mentions of people saying they don't care about Starfield, or that they want Starfield to just hurry up and release, so Bethesda can get back to working on the Elder Scrolls 6. And I think because of this, we see even more hate towards Starfield than we usually would for a Bethesda game. Again, I do really want to emphasize that you are allowed to dislike the look of Starfield. You are allowed to not be excited for it. I'm not trying to make excuses for Bethesda here, especially when they've certainly done some bad things in the past. I am simply attempting to explain why a lot of the current hate for Starfield is happening. But that is all my thoughts. Please leave yours below. If you enjoyed today's content, I kindly ask that you leave it a like, as it really helps out the channel and myself. If you are new to the channel and you enjoy Starfield content and wish to stay updated on all Starfield news, leaks, rumours and other discussions such as this one, please do consider subscribing, as I cover all of it over here. And a big thank you to our channel members, Jesse Cole, Maze and Kylo. Your support is truly appreciated and I cannot thank you enough. But with all of that said and done, that will do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope to see you in the next one.